the 100th anniversary of the Forestry Commission. So as we look back, we kind of think about what the agenda of the organisation has been through that time, and you can see sort of gradual transition towards sort of whatever this kind of social agenda of the day. That's what the Forestry Commission has been trying to kind of align itself with. And starting back with growing timber, and then rural economy, and then about the habitats and the environment, and sort of more recently about public access, recreation, well-being, climate change, flood alleviation. Those are the sorts of topics that we're trying to sort of kind of fulfill sort of the government's priorities. And it's in that context really that I've put together some slides that provide an introduction to what Katie will describe. I work for the National Office, so mine is a kind of a bit of an overview as the sort of thinking around why this is important and how we're trying to meet that government agenda, and then Katie will give you some specific local examples of how that's being applied. So is there anyone here from Sport England? No, okay, I can be honest then. Sport England is, I met with some guys from Sport England last week. They were some consultants who were putting together some case studies of Forestry Commission kind of examples of how the Forestry Commission is involved in accessibility, making the forest a more active place for people to engage. And by way of introduction, they said, we're architects and we've been involved in gyms, sports halls and swimming pools. And because we're architects, we're really interested in how you, through design and quality, can make an inviting experience for people to come into one of those three kind of leisure facilities, sports facilities, by way of the glazing or the lighting that there is that makes that a really enticing, and putting some of you off already, aren't you? You can picture. And I'm going, what are you talking about? You know, a lot of people will be just turned off by that experience of sport. And that's what Sport England's own assessment, if you haven't read this, I'm sure many of you have, Getting Active Outdoors. It's a fantastic background to the kind of the outdoor recreation industry, and how through getting active outdoors you can make a huge difference in people's lives. Their own evidence says, and I won't dwell on too much statistics because we've had quite a lot already, but I'll just pick out some key facts. 60% of people say they're not more active because they don't like sports, and it's because when we were at school it was just a horrific experience. Muddy, cold, embarrassing, just useless at sport. That's me I'm talking about. And again for myself, outdoor activity, I love being outdoors. I love walking, I love I love nature and the kind of being in fresh air. I'm sure Richard, you know, I'm not coming at it from a scientific point of view, but it can be backed up with evidence that people who spend time outdoors live more healthy lives. And that walking is kind of the simplest, the most accessible to most, and the most beneficial to people in creating sort of healthy lives. I think the other thing that's interesting, and I'll kind of broaden this into the topic for today, is that it's that elderly population, as we all get older, less mobile, it's that population kind of that has free time maybe to come to the forest and to spend their time in the forest. And that sort of disconnect with nature has been happening over a long period of time. So these statistics will relate to that report, so participating in the outdoors. So the theme of this is that actually outdoor recreation is primarily, for all of us, started as a family activity, and it's through it being a family activity that we pass it on to our family, that it becomes a kind of cultural, generational experience. That's the kind of an overarching theme. There's a number of other things that kind of come out from this, is that nature is the thing that's the motivator, and some of the barriers that come from being active outdoors relate to these, and these are some of these kind of groups that we heard mentioned of earlier. You notice how often confidence or lack of confidence comes up amongst those groups. So I think there's some quite simple measures that could be taken as a designer or a land manager to giving people confidence in finding their way around. This one in the middle, I'm just going to highlight this group that they'd identified in their report. It's confidence, and there's safety, that's obvious. People are concerned that it's a safe environment for them. Finding their way around, I think that's about confidence again. Shelter, rest points, access issues, I think that's again about surfacing, the barriers that we heard about, obstacles in the way, and distances, I think that's about messaging again. Some of these things are kind of tied up together, but you can see that there's a relationship between each of the barriers that I think as a designer we can do something about. The report divides group into groups, and I can't remember, there's maybe 10 or 15 kind of segments they call them, or people who are taking share of the outdoor participation market. The first one we'll skim over because I think that's basically your gym, swimming pool, sports centre outdoors. They're people who go because they love fitness and they're confident, so crack on, you can do that yourself. It's this kind of larger share, this is the largest share of the group who are participating outdoors, and they're called the explorers. What's really interesting about them is they like walking. That was the key for their getting active. They like the scenery is a key thing for them. They like being with friends and family, relaxing and unwinding, and then there's some statistics there. This is an interesting one. 49% of them are doing that throughout the year, so they're regular, and some of them are doing it more frequently than just once a week. Or actually, 25% of them are doing it weekly. The Explorer group, they want more relaxed kind of walking experiences. That kind of relates. If we're thinking about toddlers, less able-bodied people, elderly people. We have a trail down where I work in Exeter, and I just was kind of often walking behind a family group, and within a very short time of a 2-kilometre trail, you can hear the little children saying, "Are we nearly finished yet? I've had enough." And as I thought, that's really interesting. We need to address that for people who are active, we think 2 kilometres, that's easy, anybody can do that. But if we're really catering for the ends of the sort of age groups, then we need to be providing shorter alternatives to give people confidence to practice, to be able to get themselves to a level of fitness, and I'll revisit that in a moment. They're also interested in viewpoint shelters by exploring scenery. They're interested in these other activities, bird watching, photography, and they're interested in spending time with their family and friends, so a place to sit. So there's a bit of a kind of recurring theme coming out from reading this report. And then the older age groups, I think I won't go into that because I want to skip on really to the solutions that we came up with in terms of our design. Again, disability groups, shelter, rest, short trail, safety reassurance. Families, again, a short trail, somewhere to play, somewhere to stop, and something for children to encourage them sort of later in life to correct that pattern of behaviour. What we did as a group, we came up with, it's a pre-existing site with a large number of visitors, around 200, 300,000 visitors a year. We wanted to actually add some things for these particular groups. So we're not making our offer bigger by extending bigger trails, more extreme mountain biking. Actually, it's a kind of drawing in to providing for the groups of people who are going to find mobility more difficult, for the toddlers, for the elderly, for the less mobile. And we were able to secure about, I think it was £170,000 worth of external funding through the RDPE funding, Rural Development Partnerships in England. And that was funded through Age UK, so they were a partner organisation, a really key kind of opportunity to use a group for whom would end up being our user group, but for them to use their members as part of the sort of sounding board. So they were the forum, as it were, for where these ideas were developed. And shortening the trails, the viewpoints that we created, and the sort of connection with nature. So I'll show you 3 structures. This is the first of 3. And they formed £45,000 worth of the funding. So you can tell me whether you think that's good value or not. This is a 200-metre walk along an all-ability path. That is the shelter's got some interpretation in it. different sort of viewing heights for people, whether they're sat on a mobility scooter or a wheelchair or they're a child. The space had to be designed to be able to accommodate a tramper to turn around in it. The remainder of the funding went to fund 2 trampers. We've heard about trampers today, so that's a fleet of 4 now at this location. So that begins then to draw out some of those things that were identified previously. In the distance there, you can see Hey Tor, maybe? It's an act of faith. Hey Tor in the background from this new viewpoint that's been created, again, with purchase for people who find it difficult to sit down, a sort of a seating table kind of thing that people can move around to find their way through. Adjacent to this is some children's play, just very simple bits of children's play, a balance beam and some stepping logs. The idea being that to accommodate the family group, being able to allow older folk to sit and enjoy the view, or to read the interpretation, to enjoy meeting together, but the children to be able to explore and engage with the natural environment around them is a very kind of simple thing to do. My own belief is that we often spend too much money providing children's play in a forest or in other environments, when actually the forest is the playful environment. It's just about, if I'm really honest, it's about getting adults to stop. There's a really fascinating, 100 meters from this location is a spot where there's 3 or 4 picnic benches that are redundant from some other sculpture it was. The picnic benches are there, and the children, you can see the evidence of their play all around. We didn't build anything, we just provided for the adults. I think that's a fascinating piece of kind of psychology. This is the third of the 3 structures. This is a viewing tower, viewing shelter, again with some children's play, some interpretation, some seating, and some views over the Tin Valley. I kind of, that was in essence the project. It's only just been opened, so I can't give you any kind of feedback in terms of how successful that is. My gut feeling is that this is going to be super successful for the groups of people who we targeted as our kind of key audience for helping people get more active, engaging with the natural environment, and then kind of establishing those patterns of behaviour that then they pass on generationally from one to the other. I'm just going to conclude my thoughts on this. It was part of an active forest programme, which Katie's going to speak about on another site where she's the active forest coordinator. And we were approached initially to provide some activities on the site. And you can imagine you go through football, and football in the forest. Why? You can do that down in the gym. What is it that we can do to get people in their car to drive to a forest to then do that activity that they couldn't just walk down the road and do in their town or their city or their village? And of course it has to be something to do with the connection with the forest. That's what makes it so special to come and do yoga or Pilates or some meditation or Nordic walking or park run. It's about trying to find those activities that we, and probably anyone who's involved in land management, can do uniquely in their setting. And this was also funded from that same project to facilitate those activities, either as a location for them to happen or a base for people to arrive and kind of gather and meet and socialise.
Hello everyone, so I'm Katie, I'm the Active Forest Coordinator at Wendover Woods. As Roger mentioned, I'm part of a larger Active Forest programme which is being delivered nationally across 18 different Forestry England sites. I'm based at Wendover. We've recently had some really positive developments which has helped us as a site increase accessibility and broaden our activity offer. So at Wendover we've recently undergone a £4.5 million redevelopment, and what this development has basically done is pedestrianised our core area to make it safer for our visitors to come to the site and not have to worry about that danger of vehicles when you're just about to start out on your walk. The new car park has increased capacity to over 500 spaces, So previously on site we were quite limited with our spaces. The car parking area was quite tight, chaotic, and this is basically just for all of the vehicles to one contained area and made it safer for our visitors to the site. Also, part of that is we've got 20 accessible spaces which are very close to our core area in terms of toilets, new cafe and changing places facility. So yeah, the new cafe developed in an ideal setting overlooking the Chilterns, just a few hundred metres walk from the car park. So if that's a barrier to participation for some people, they've just got that shorter distance and they can get to the cafe. We've had a new information point put in place. That for us as a site has been incredibly beneficial because it's meant that we can have staff based in that core area to be on hand and give out advice when we have new visitors who are unfamiliar with the forestry environment come and visit us. So it's been mentioned a lot today about a lack of information being a barrier for people coming to visit the forest. With this information point, we've got lots of new families coming up who just come straight to the information point and ask about the activity pack or what is there to do or what's the children's offer, and we're able to be there on hand to guide them in the right direction. We've also got a new changing places facility being put in place, and this is really positive. Again, it's very close to the car park, so any users who will need to access that facility can arrive at the site, have the comfort of knowing that the facility is close to the car park, and then go out and explore the forest. So this is our new cafe. It's a great improvement on the old one. So our existing cafe is quite small, very difficult to get a wheelchair in, very difficult to get a buggy in. With this larger building, we've got seating for 100 indoors and 200 outdoors, and it just makes it much more spacious and accessible. And obviously, in addition to the forestry setting being an appeal for visitors to come along to us, having a decent cafe has actually been recognised as one of the key motivations. This is an architect's design of the new layout. So as you can see, car park is contained to this area over here. Then we've got our new information point here with changing places facility and the new cafe over here. So it's all in close proximity. The old car park used to be in this area here, which meant we wouldn't have been able to begin sessions and events from this area as we are now. And it's been a big improvement with this new exit road which diverts the traffic away from the core area. Okay, so we've had a new accessible all ability, all access play trail put in place, which is wheelchair friendly, buggy friendly. It's great because it's short, so people that are looking just to come up for a short walk or short visit have the reassurance of knowing that they can either do the 600 metre short loop or the 1k long loop. It's got 8 pieces of play equipment along its length, and it's all natural play, so it's very aesthetically pleasing, fits in with the natural environment. As Roger mentioned earlier on about these developments, it's about letting people come to the forest, children explore in their natural environment. These are very open areas, so there's no boundaries, there's no fences. Children, once they're done with the play equipment, can then go off and explore in the forest. So this is a bit more about our Changing Places facility. So what we did was a consultation with the local community prior to establishing the fit out of this facility. It was very interesting. We gave some really good feedback. So just simple things like not having an automatic dryer that could startle a user of the Changing Places facility, having a press button dryer. And also things like actually take a wheelchair into the facility when you're fitting it out and see how things move around to make sure that you've got things positioned in the right place. It's London Marathon Trust funded, so a large part of what we're doing with this facility is to help increase activity levels of potential users. And part of what I'm doing as the Active Forest programme will be to set up an activity offer to meet the needs of these users and help them become more active and visit the forest more regularly. So a bit more on the National Active Forest Programme. Basically, their aim is to provide and increase physical activity opportunities, help overcome barriers, and to engage inactive or less active visitors, and also help accommodate regular behaviour. Our target is to have 5 million active visitors over 5 years, and support behaviour change and promote positive mental well-being. So our Wendover target is to get 149,000 physically active visits within a year by 2022, so that's per year. Okay, so a big part of my role is I establish and embed national programmes at the site. So I'll go on to talk about Gruffalo Orienteering and our running routes offer. And that's basically, we've got a national design, and as Active Forest coordinators on site, we're there to implement it and support people through it and promote it. Here's a few pictures of the activities that we've done so far. So this is Mummy Fit, our Mummy Fit sessions. Whilst the new cafe building wasn't being used, we had the sessions set up indoors through the colder months. It was really, really popular. Mummy Gets Fit, it's a great way to ease back into activity after giving birth, or you can do it during pregnancy also. My sister's there in the session. She did this when she was 8 months pregnant, so it just shows how flexible the instructor can be to meet the needs of the participants. It's been set up with a local provider, Jodie Digby Fitness, and she's obviously already got great connections within the area, which is helping us establish that new community at Wendover Woods. Then we've got images from our new park run, which was set up in September. This is a 10k and half marathon event which we delivered. Part of the Active Forest programme is to deliver a wider programme of events, and that was one of those. And then also we've got Premier Education on site now. So that was an archery session set up during the school half term. And what they're doing is adventure activities on site, so geocaching, archery, fencing, and it's just really adventure activities that are different to what they'd go and deliver in the schools. It's been really popular, particularly geocaching, as it's something that the parents could come around and get involved in as well. And we're looking to do more and broaden that offer. So I've mentioned Gruffalo Orienteering and the running routes that we've installed. Park Run, it's been established. As some of you may know, Wendover Woods is very hilly, it's quite up and down. So at the moment that is quite a challenging route for smaller legs. So we're looking to introduce a junior park run, which will be on a flatter course and will be easier for the younger children to get involved in. Having said that, our existing park run are very good and definitely encourage walking, jogging or running the route. We've had people along who haven't done a park run before and have really enjoyed it, just walking around the route. So this is a few pictures from our Gruffalo Orienteering. Gruffalo Orienteering, it was set up in partnership with British Orienteering. So what they did, so Thames Valley Orienteering Club came out to us and helped us map the route. Our route is 1.5 kilometres long. It takes you off slightly further into the woods, off the forest roads, and it's got 12 way markers along the route with plaques on which ask engaging questions. So this is what the map looks like. If you want to have a look at this afterwards, you're very welcome to. Skip through because we're running out of time. And then this is a bit of a case study on our Wendover Woods Park Run. So it's already massively had an impact on participation with 2,284 participants altogether. It's been really good for volunteers. So we've gained a lot of volunteering hours, and now what we're looking to do is signpost through the local GP practice for people who may be socially isolated to come and experience volunteering opportunities and be part of that community. So they're not necessarily doing the intense activity of running around a 5k route, but they're still being involved. This also drives off-peak visits, so we're really looking to get people into the woods at quieter times and utilising that time and space that's available. And that is it. I know we're quite short on time, so I don't know. Yeah? Brilliant. Any questions?
I have put one to Roger, is that in order?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Just a quickie, you talked, which I very much agree, giving people confidence.
Yes.
I think it's a problem. I think it's why led walks are so popular. People don't go walking on their own, which is where it should start.
Yeah.
And kind of just draw attention to everyone to the statutory thing, the Countryside Act of 1968, which requires, obliges, proper waymarks and proper signposts, because it just doesn't happen. They just don't do it. They don't understand the law, for a start. And even the Ramblers didn't understand the law 10 years ago. So, you know, I think this is something we can perhaps all push for. Let's get some really good signposting, waymarking, saying where it goes. Thank you.
I will just add, just in answer to your question, moving forward, what we are looking to do is an accessible sort of maps offer. We're looking to use technology as well. So, as John, you had your videos up earlier of different routes. What we're looking to do is produce an accessibility map which outlines where there's seating, like shorter routes, where there's seating along those routes. And then in addition to that, maybe have a video of the actual routes and also pictures, just to give that reassurance. So that's moving forward, but not yet.
Perhaps a law for electronic signposts should be brought in. Because most people can pick them up, can't they? It's a lot cheaper. It's quite expensive putting up the signposts with the proper details on them.
But I think that's a really valid point, so thank you.
Yeah.
It was just a quick question. Obviously, your Gruffalo is a British England package.
Yes.
But British Orienteering used to do something called Explore Orienteering, if I remember rightly, which is sort of like package, which is very similar, but could be done on any open space, and they will come and help you set that up.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's in the pipeline, and it's been explored at other sites. I know Holden and Solsey have explored it. And the great thing about Explorer is it's not just, obviously Gruffalo is very sort of 4 to 11 younger age group, whereas the Explorer Orienteering is open to like a wider age group that is still, you know, it's not as complex as a original orienteering map. So.
The photos I showed, that there's a Holder, and I'm pretty certain that they've got a tramper orienteering course as well. Yeah, and so yeah, the relationship isn't through the Gruffalo organisation, it's with the orienteering.
One last question.
Yeah, thanks. It's a sort of observation actually. It comes back to something that both of you have been talking about. But firstly, Roger, you talked to, I mean, you showed the design of a beautiful easy access trail there, and it looked like a fantastic example of it. But when I first became disabled 23 years ago, easy access trails were my biggest bugbear, because in Colchester, where I come from, I think there's 3, and that's all. The council thought that was sufficient in itself, and I visited them in turn. They're about half a mile long, and I was like, I got to the end of it, and what now? And I could see all these trails that I might have been able to take, but I didn't have information about them, or I experimented and met a barrier. So I was at easy access trails, great, but wherever possible, I would say make sure they are interconnected with longer sets of routes, and make sure they're not considered sufficient in, you know, in themselves. Because I'm, you know, just even in this wheelchair, without a tramp or anything else, because I didn't have access to a tramp or even the bike I've got that you'll see later on today. For the first 20 years of my disability, I was just in my chair, but I pushed miles across countryside in this chair. It's possible, you know? Yeah. So that was one thing. The other thing came down to questions about confidence and information, and you did talk about it right at the end, but disabled people, they don't have a culture of accessing the countryside. They're sitting at home in front of their computers mostly, you know, wondering how and where to get out. So they're not going to get to the, it's important to have information at the site themselves, but I mean, if they're not even going to get to the site, that's useless. So it's the information that they can get in advance about opportunities, and visual information is tremendously important, photographs and video, because so many people can look at an image and images can give misinformation. They have to be good ones, well thought out ones, but providing they are, lots of different kinds of people can take immediate different kinds of information that's relevant to themselves from the same image. Yeah. Anyway,
I think that's a really good point. As part of our walking product development offer and producing more accessible resources, is that we will look to work in partnerships with experts, you know, people who who know and have those connections already in the community that we don't necessarily have. So we're definitely looking to get that expert advice as we produce this product.